I'm going to
I'm
put
Rob
my
Lucuria,
phone on.
Senior Editor at Gold Derby, and I'm here with Janicza Bravo, Director and co-writer of the indie film smash Zola. Now, Janicza, first of all, you've just been put on the long list at the BAFTAs. You got 7 Indie Spirit nominations for the film, including Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Film. What do accolades like this mean to you?
Gosh, it's so, well, I'll say for me, I remember I look back on theater school. I went to theater school, not film school. And I had this design teacher that would often say that sort of the fame or the celebrity or the accolades are not a valid want or not a valid end goal. And I do think that that's totally true, and it stayed with me, and sort of it's something that I think about oftentimes when I'm approaching the work. And the reason I say it is because I think it's hard. It takes so long to get to make the shit. And that
Yeah.
while you're making it, I think it's hard to not play the end result, right? Like, and then on the other side of this is what it's going to look like. And I'm going to feel like I've arrived. And then finally, there's going to be, it's flowers at the end of the opera. And I'd be lying if I didn't want some of that. Of course I do, because the validation does this twofold thing. Not only does it make me feel like I'm on the right path, but it also opens another door, right? It means that I can go into a certain room and say, look, these accolades they can't all be wrong, right? Like, it's not just my own ego that's like, allowing me to move on to the next thing. It's also that some body of other people, independent of me, have also agreed that I get to be here.
That's right. And
and the BAFTA long list is like, I feel so fancy. I know it's the only recognition we have on it, but I was like, yes.
I saw that. I'm like, that's nothing to sneeze at. And
it's nothing to sneeze at. Hey, I'm gonna take that into the next week and a half.
I think you should. And I think you should sip tea whilst thinking about it. You know what though? Like, you're going to get eyeballs on the film. Like, you worked so hard. The whole cast and crew worked their asses off to make this crazy madcap movie. But people got to see the thing, and getting awards means people will be aware of it. So that's fantastic. Now, speaking of, we were talking offline. You made this film in 2018. And then, of course, we had this pesky thing called the pandemic that just interrupted everything.
What's that?
So you've been on, it's like so annoying. But you've been on this journey for a while now, talking about Zola, and people are finally starting to realize it opened about 6 months ago in theaters. So this is what I'd love to know from you, because this film defies classification for me. It's very genre bending. So what do you tell people when they're like, oh, what's this Zola about? Tell me quickly, what do you think it's about? Like, what do you say? Because then I've got my own theories.
Okay, so I'll kind of go back to my very initial pitch of it. And that is, so in 2018, we shoot the movie in Tampa, Florida. And, it's all real locations. So every time you walk into someone's house or a hotel or their liquor store and you're telling them you want to shoot there, they ask you what the movie's about. And you kind of have to lead with the positives, right? Because you want them to say yes to you. If you're leading with sex work, not everyone's going to say no, but a good majority of people are going to feel like, I'm not sure this is for me. So I would say, it's a dark comedy. 2 women become fast friends. They go on a road trip with the promise of making money, and things do not go as planned.
That's perfect. That's
exactly. And obviously there's like 800 more things behind all of that.
There's so much more.
But that's the elevator pitch.
That's the elevator pitch. What happened with me was I had no idea what this was about, and I knew that it was kind of acclaimed and was getting awards and stuff, so I knew it was on the radar. And then we see Zola played by Taylor, and she says, you want to know how me and this bitch fell out? And I swear to you, I was immediately hooked, because I'm just like, yeah, I do want to know how you fell out, because you both look like complete nutters, or especially the character played by Riley Stephanie. I was immediately hooked. So this is like a black comedy, a crazy road trip dramedy, a harrowing crime thriller. I had no idea what was coming. There are bits of this where I was just like, oh, geez. So I'm wondering, what's been the reaction from, people on the street, your peers, industry and so forth? What do people most want to talk to you about when talking about this film?
I think the thing that they're most drawn to would be tone. Tone seems
Yeah,
to be the takeaway, right? Or like that's one of the things that people gravitate towards is not only the tone, and I would say the second thing is the engagement of social media, or our
yeah,
digital engagement, how
yeah,
like the digital aspect of our life that we're so deeply tethered to, how that's engaged inside of the film. And I think it's, and I feel sort of crass saying it, but I think that it does feel inventive. I don't want to lead with that, but maybe you can.
it's
I
true.
feel sort of like icky saying that about
But
myself.
it's true.
But I think that those two things are super curious to people, that tonally it is funny, but it is also super stressful and really scary, and that it can be both of those things or all of those things, right? That it can feel terrifying and also funny, and sometimes those things happen right next to each other, I think is super curious to people, because that is probably the hardest sell. I would say for my work in general, my work tends to, I believe I exist under the umbrella or the banner of stressful comedy. And, it's one thing to say it, and then it's another thing to actually, land the landing, right?
Yeah,
And so I feel, to me, like, when I say that, I'm like, no, look at Zola. That's that thing. And my film before it too also kind of plays in that space. It's incredibly uncomfortable, but also funny and also scary. And that's I think how you kind of sell that or pitch that
yeah,
is always sort of has seemed to be really kind of a fascinating place for people.
yeah. It really is. I think when most people want to talk about this movie with you, they want to talk about the social media aspect. So let's get that. I mean, I didn't want to lead with that because it kind of feels a bit been there, done that. But let's talk about it a little bit because it's important. This movie is based on a series of tweets, which is novel in itself. And the tweets went viral. It was a Rolling Stone article. And then you took it on a little bit later. It was in production for a while. Then you took it on in 2018. So how on earth do you start like adapting an article and some tweets? Because to me, that seems completely unadaptable.
That's so funny. I feel like, so the Twitter thread came out in 2015. I actually went after it when it came out. I did not get it.
Yeah.
Case in point, we're here, or at least that's where we are in this conversation. And then but I knew some of the auspices, and I had reached out and said, the nature of our industry is that people are on projects and they move on, or money falls apart. It can take a while, especially with a film of our size, for things to actually come to fruition, right?
Yeah.
So I throw my name in the hat. I didn't get it. I reached out to the people who were working on it, and I said, if it comes back again, please consider me. I'd love to meet on this. And so in 2017, at the beginning of 2017, my first film had premiered at Sundance. And right after coming back from that, I'd heard that Zola was potentially available again. Its last director was stepping down, but there was already a script. And so I got my hands on the script, I read it, and I just was like, please, please consider me. I can see how my first film doesn't feel like the right audition for this, but I know that I feel it in my bones that I'm the right person for this. So I went after it. And what you said kept coming up. How is this a movie? And I think there are two things going on there. One, the Twitter thread is epic. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's so ferocious, it's so electric. And I think that one thing that happens is, well, how is it going to be better than that? Right? Like there's no way that it's going to be better than that. And I think that is totally valid. But the film is in a lot of ways independent of what the thread did, because it's one thing to sit on your toilet and read this for 10-15 minutes, or to sit at your desk, or to sit on your couch, or to sit in your bed, whatever place you found yourself reading it. To read it on your own on the phone is a different experience than actually once it is on its feet. It had always read like an outline to me. When I read it in October, the day it came out, I felt like it was an outline. I felt the prologue, I felt the epilogue, I saw the first act, the second act, the third act. And how I read the tweets were almost like bullet points, right? Like, this is, I had printed them once I actually got the movie. I printed out the thread and cut each line as its own as a standalone, and then put them up on a wall as first, second, and third act. And the first act was basically everything that happens at home. In the thread, that's Detroit. In our world, home is kind of like a nebulous place. And then the second act, or the beginning of that second act, is like leaving home, landing in Florida, and everything that feels colorful and saturated and rambunctious is that second act. And once you are vomiting on a floor or handing someone a gun, you've entered that third act, that third panel, because that's the farthest away from home.
Wow. So yeah, you're putting aside the form of it. Yeah, they're tweets, so what? They're words and they're a story, and you're able to map it out that way. That's fascinating. And what the other thing that fascinates me is we've seen a lot of movies lately that that use flourishes from social media. Like, we see text on screen or whatever it may be, like TikTok style scenes where they're very quick and sharp. You do this to perfection because you use those sounds that that, how they give you that dopamine hit when you get that little like. That this film does this constantly. And I remember I was watching it with my wife and she's like, "Is that your phone?" I'm like, no, this is a movie. This is the movie.
But that's good. I love that. Oh my gosh, the first time we saw a cut of it, my editor and I, Joy McMillan, I think it was, so at 10, once you've shot a film, you've got 10 weeks to do a director's cut and before you hand it over to the studio and your producers, right? And so we got to do this mini screening kind of right before, where we invited people in just so that we could use that as a barometer of like where we were or weren't going. And the first time it happened, we only had 10 people in a room. Half of the room went and checked their phones. And I was like, yes, that's the thing. And I remember reading, this is maybe a slight segue, but I remember reading about, it's this interview, I think it's with Roman Polanski. It's many, 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 many years ago. It's about Rosemary's Baby. There's a scene in Rosemary's Baby where Mia Farrow is on a phone call and you're only seeing part of her body. And I think that in the interview, he talks about the studio or financier not liking that scene because you couldn't see her face and feeling like you needed to reshoot it. And when they screened it, a portion of the audience moved in their seats as if they could get a better view of her. And to me, that's theater, right? Like being able that the audience is so inside of it that they're moving. And so I felt like if for a second you found yourself feeling, it's also the stress of, is my phone on, right? So suddenly you're like stressed out, you're tense and you keep looking and you're like, is it me? Have I done something wrong? So that you're also culpable, right? Or you're participating you're participating along with the film. And it's a reminder of our own kind of Pavlovian relationship to these sounds.
Yeah, man. It really is. Like, it was starting to really affect me. There's even a scene, it's so simple, but so effective, when they're in a car late at night and you put the timestamp and it just looks like the front of my phone. And I'm just, how many times have I been in a car kind of a bit inebriated? How am I going to get home? And then I'm looking at the time, like, geez, it's 12:42 a.m. Like, those little touches, I don't know whether they're intentional, but they really immersed me in this harrowing experience. So do you ever find, like, did you have to pull back any at all? Or were you just like, let's just throw as much of these flourishes as possible because we want the audience to feel stressed out like they're in this situation?
It's a combination of things. There are things that happened in the edit that were not on script that are digital. The timestamp was something that happened in the edit with Joy. And there's this moment where a screensaver, this kind of neon screensaver takes over and it's playing like inside of Taylor Page. That was something that also had happened in the edit. And we were just trying these flourishes. There's a moment where Riley Keough's character is taking pictures, and like for all of those blacks that kind of happen in between the photo when you do it on a phone, we were just like, throw it all in there and let's see. And if it doesn't work, we'll pull things back. And I feel like some of that was, I had this thought that if if all of Earth was decimated, but somehow this movie was left like on the ground of a video store, and the aliens come and they're like, what was America like? What was this world like? That this is one of those movies you could plug into a VCR and it would tell you something about what it had been like here, right? That I wanted it to feel like also a love letter to this period. I mean, 2015 is not that long ago, but it feels so far, especially right now.
Doesn't it ever? The world. I mean, yeah. Anyone who used to complain, I remember people like 2016 was such a hard, terrible year. I'm like, really? Let's hold my beer and let's see what happens. It's so true. The film, though, really, as you mentioned earlier, touched on the third act delves into some really confronting territory as Zola realizes she's in way over her head. It doesn't shy away at all from contemplating what this underbelly kind of looks like, and we don't fully appreciate. I'm not in that world. I have no idea. So were you particularly interested in bringing the audience along for this crazy, nerve-wracking, sex and drug-fueled odyssey? Because you don't gloss over it, and some of it is really quite confronting to watch.
Well, I just, that was the story as she told it. And so to go back to that, the reading it on your phone is a different experience than watching it. And I think the thing that happened on the phone was incredibly safe. When someone read it and had their experience of it, a kind of note or criticism I'd gotten when the film started to come out, or when critics were watching it before we premiered, was the thread was so much funnier, or the thread, I just walked away from the thread wanting to party, and I walk away from your movie and I feel like I need a shower. And I had suggested to people that they go back and read it, actually, because it was all there. I think it's like, what are the louder notes for us, right? And I feel, again, the experience of being in the safety of your home and reading something like this, or reading a part of it at a party and shouting it out at your friends, that is not the thing, right? What was happening was this young Black woman had signed up for a certain kind of experience that had been pitched a certain way, that had been presented a certain way. And then what really happened is she was duped. She believed someone to be her friend. She was totally duped. And on top of being duped, the way that she was being duped is that she was being sold into sex slavery and was being told that she had no agency. And that is at the core of either version, right? Be it the film, be it the thread, that is actually there. Even if we have these fabulous quips, even like with the quick wit of Zola, that is literally what is happening. I felt it was super necessary that I did want to have a good time. I wanted the movie to feel like a party. I don't know if it's a party you want to be at, but I did want it to feel that way. But I also wanted to I think when you walk away from the movie, I feel like, we watch movies, you walk away from them and you're like, the music was great, or I liked this actor, or whatever the things are that we gravitate towards. And I'd hope that on that list of top 3 things, that there was perhaps the potentiality to be able to talk about sex trafficking, to be able to talk about sex slavery, and that maybe the film had softened that subject matter in a way that would allow someone like you or me to feel like we could be a part of that conversation. I don't think, if there wasn't humor in the movie, I wouldn't be the right director for it. And I also know that I would feel a bit intimidated talking about this subject matter, talking about sex work, because I would think that it wasn't my place. And I feel a lot of us feel it isn't our place, but the truth is it's right next to us. So we should be talking about it.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that I went along for the ride, as harrowing as it ended up being. I did not see that coming. And I think if I was a director, I'd want audiences to have no idea where I'm leading them. And you certainly did that, Janicza. Thank you so much for your time today. Good luck this award season.
Thank you.
Enjoy your tea, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Robert. You have a great day.